For the Love of Rugby, brought to you by Blackheart. It's for those that ruck, maul, and never back down.
The tournament has started. France have beaten Wales. Can anyone beat France?
Yes. No. Because I had them predicted to win. I mean, France never got out of second gear, to be honest with you. I tell you what, from the start, though, I love the atmosphere. I mean, Coley, we've spoken about playing in France and how cool it is, but like the lights, the fireworks, the flames, the entrance, mate, like that. I'm going to say, I think they're world leading in terms of, we saw the showdown against New Zealand in the autumn and how cool that was with the spotlights and stuff. And it's like, you can just see that French rugby is thriving and they're doing everything they can to make it as entertaining as possible pre-game, which, to be fair, the game wasn't actually that entertaining. So it's a good job that they did that at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, it started off, didn't it? Say, entrance is brilliant, anthem's awesome. The French crowd are sort of banging for the first 5-10 minutes of the game. And then the game happened. And it was kind of like, I think Wales attacked for the opening sort of couple of minutes. The French crowd's on its feet, it's brilliant. A couple of nice things from France. And it was just like, so this is the game, is it? And 70 minutes later, it was like, oh, that was the game. Cool.
It did feel a bit like that. You know what? Like, it is at the start of the game, I was watching Wales and I'm thinking, they got a bit about them. They're looking all right here. Bit of shape. And I'll touch on their shape in a little while. But then France just kind of cruised and eased to a win, really, without having to, I'd say, work for it too much.
I'd agree. You look at France, they were kind of just casual in some regard. Defensively, didn't really have much line speed, just sort of didn't really attack the breakdown too hard. A couple of times they put into a couple of bodies or jackal it, but they just looked like they were sort of filling the field. They're almost interesting, on a different note, it'll be interesting how it goes in the tournament, but like the line speed was brought by the fifth defender and he kind of ran out a bit, especially in the second half, ran out a bit, almost tried to force Welsh back inside, or if they went out the back, he'd make a read. So it's quite interesting, a bit different than that. But yeah, and attack-wise, they just sort of went through the gears in regards to sort of just individual carry. It's like, even if it's slow ball, they just have big men move the ball and then they almost just look for one-on-ones in the back line, don't they? Like Dupont will bring the ball out the back and he'll find Ntamack or Ramos or something like that, and they'll just make something happen with a one-on-one. Yeah,
they just basically, they're not really going anywhere. They win the collision though. There's not much shape to them. One offload sticks and away they go. But Coley, that's a really good point, because I was going to talk about the D, and actually let's start with that, because you're right. Traditionally, Shaun Edwards is a up and in defence, like getting off the line, pressuring you. But I totally agree with you. France's line speed actually didn't look anywhere near as aggressive as I've seen it previously, or what you'd expect from Shaun Edwards. But there was definitely definitely a tactical decision from like the fifth, sixth defender of France. So for listeners, like if you've got a breakdown, sixth defender out, he was almost getting ahead of everyone else. And like you say, forcing Wales back in. And you do that to basically force them in and then let your guys jackal it and try and steal it and win it. Or get high so that you can't actually play at the back out of that arrowhead. So if you're Wales and you're hitting that arrowhead, that middle forward, pod of 3 forwards, you hit that middle guy, you can't actually play out the back to 10 because that guy's in the eye line and you're like, I've got to carry it and dip back in.
I'll tell you what good France are. They technically don't miss many tackles. Like, you know, when they say one-on-one in the wide channels and stuff, like the wingers get in there, stick in there, make the tackle or wrap the ball up or get, lose a couple of yards, but they don't, almost like, I don't know if it's the defensive safety net, but even when Wales kick returns, sort of, there's one-on-ones and stuff that France are quite happy just to, they've got great individual skilled players that make those one-on-one tackles and just, there's the attacks that are gone.
Yeah, they've got good athletes and you're right, they don't fall off many, if any. They just kind of, like they've got speed to almost cover it, but they're also technically very good. You're right, you don't see them fall off any, but Wales just had such a lack of dent. And we'll get to Dupont and France and all these bits, but actually let's talk about Wales' shape to start with. I couldn't believe how scripted their shape was, Coley. So it was basically, if the first breakdowns from a touchline, they'd run an arrowhead, so a pod of 3 forwards, they'd hit the middle guy, which often was Rawlings, the lock. He would then carry it. Then off that ruck, it would go straight to 10, who had another arrowhead off him, so it'd go through 10's hands and hit the middle forward. That guy could play out the back or tip, but often he just carried it. So this point, you're in the middle of the field. Then it'd go to 10 again on the same way. He'd have one runner short off him and a player out the back, and then get to that breakdown. And then they would just repeat coming back the other way. So they'd run an arrow again, go to 10, play the arrowhead off him, and then do the same shape again off 10, one short out the back. And it was just rinse and repeat. And I couldn't believe it, mate. Like, because one, they've got no dent, like they don't have ball carriers, like they're not blessed with ball carriers. So if you are going to play like that, then the shape needs to be so much tighter. You need little passes in it. I think they did 2 little passes maybe, and Nicky Smith went through twice, like through little intricate passes from tightness in the shape. But equally, if you're playing France, you want to go down short sides. So in my opinion, you should be running that arrowhead off the sideline, get into that middle guy, get sort of past the 15 metre line in terms of your ruck, where your reference point is. Then you want to be coming back down where you've just come from, because it's easy meters on edges and short sides coming down there. But I couldn't believe how much it was rinse and repeat of that shape, just over and over and over again with no dent. And honestly, like, if that's how they're going to carry on doing it, then they are going to struggle to break down teams. And actually looking at the Sage Insights, mate, like it proper highlights it. So possession was 50-50 between both teams. Balls played, Wales had 412, France had 301. And then when you look at carries, Wales had 158 and France had 140. So Wales had more in both of those, but it just shows you like what they're doing with the ball in that shape. It just isn't, they're not getting any reward from it at all. Like total passes, Wales 233, France 146.
If you just look at them without watching the game, you think, oh, Wales did all right. You know, watch that, and they actually delve into them. You're like, they're passing the ball a lot, and you think, oh, loads of passes, that's really good. But if you're not going anywhere, what's the point in passing it? I think that's the difference between the two teams. And I think, you know, possession's 50-50, which kind of surprised me, but at the same time, I suppose France probably had the majority of it in the first half. But yeah, it's definitely... if you look at it, if you're a Welsh fan, you go, oh, it doesn't look too bad. But when you actually watch what was put on the field, there's a lack of, as you say, dent, a lack of incision that probably the French had and they didn't. It was almost sort of death by like 1,000 paper cuts in regards to, we'll just take, 2 metres on this arrowhead carry, we'll take 2 metres here, we'll then play to an edge and take 5 metres on an edge. And then just, they played a lot of the game just inside the French, not threatening anything, but sort of around midfield, over halfway, a lot of the game, Wales in possession, and the France just sort of sat there, defended, men in the line, defended, and then as soon as there's sort of an opportunity at the ball, at the breakdown or a blast, France took it, or, a couple of times they read out of the back, and you have to play like that, I think you have to be spot on at every breakdown, and if you do make a break like Nicky Smith did, then you have to have blokes flooding offload channels or abilities, because you have to capitalise. If you make a line break, you have to then capitalise, because as soon as that opportunity's gone, you're back in shape, and that's one thing that stood out for the French. I would say the flip side is sort of Wales defended much better than we've seen previously in the autumn. But the France, as soon as they have one, all it takes a missed tackle or a half shoulder, and I mean, it's a cliche, but they're through, aren't they? Like Dupont's try came out of, sorry, not Dupont's try, the break Dupont made came out of sort of nothing. It's sort of like he sort of picks on the defender, boom, he's away, steps gone. And there's just so many of those. You give the French half a inch and they'll take it. Even in the second half, when they went, Ntamack makes a sort of 40-metre break up the middle. I think they're playing with penalty advantage, the French, in their own half. They're picking and going. I mean, they're picking and going inside their own half just to sort of get momentum. There's nothing. 9 plays that pod of forwards. It's kind of like, oh, I don't want this ball. They pull it back to Ntamack. He just turns the corner and he's gone 40 metres up the field. He's got a man on the inside. Legaric thinks on his inside to play to there. And they're just the French. As soon as they make a line break, they're just flooding offload channels and they're just ready to roll. Whereas no one else plays like that.
I completely concur with that, because Wales was so scripted, mate. It's like no one's in the play. So therefore it's like, okay, right, now this pod does this and they carry the ball. All right, now we're on the next one and we do this. And then after that, now it's our chance to take that short edge. It's like it's not how the game works. Like they were so prescribed in terms of what they were doing. And then like you say, a complete contrast to what France were up to. In terms of some of the off-the-cuff stuff and things like that. So, yeah, that was a big... It just stood out. So if you watch the game or you haven't watched it or you want to watch it back, just look out for that. It's such a distinct same-way pattern, and it's just like, get to the width, come back, get to the other width, come back, get to the other width. And for me, there was short sides to be had. You could have moved the ball more and things like that. And then within that shape, it looks nice. You could watch it, for instance, Cole, and go, oh, it's easy on the eye. Oh, look, they're carrying there and they've got another ruck and they're going there. And maybe they've gone 6-7 phases, but they haven't gone anywhere. and you're wasting so much energy in the middle of the field. You turn it over once. What does Ramos do? Picks it up, hoofs it down there, 50-22, or turns you. And you're like, fucking hell, we've gone 8-7 phases here. And yeah, like some people might be watching and go, oh, I'm liking the look of this. Like nonsense. Like you ain't going anywhere. And you're just exhausting yourself. Like, and then you're punished on the back of it really from turnovers. So yeah, that was quite evident. I would say Dan Edwards as well, though, coming on early. Good to see him make his debut. So congrats to him. I thought Jack Morgan, he actually was led from the front, to be fair, as captain. And actually, you look at the Sage Insights, he had 15 carries and 21 tackles. So he got through a mountain of work, as did a lot of the Welsh lads. Like there was a plenty of effort from them, and I agree with you defensively, although it's hard to say it when there's 43 points conceded, Coltley. But I do agree with you defensively. They definitely looked more organised, and they looked better than they did in the autumn. They definitely didn't look as vulnerable, and I know that's crazy because they've just leaked 43 points, but they looked more consistent in terms of their D.
Definitely did, yeah. And I say 43, it's tough when you're 28 at half time, and some of those have come out of nothing for France in some regards. Like, I know, Dupont's crossfield kick, whatever it is, it just comes off. I mean, Dupont wasn't even at his finest today, was he? But even his mistakes he makes, like, we'll talk about him because he's the best player in the world, but it's like, oh, he's had a bad game, and there's one bit where he sort of fumbles the ball and everyone else is a knock on. No, he just gets it, plays away. Another one where I think they play a couple of phases off a line out infield, and he sort of runs it down a short side and sort of almost like crossfield chips it away, but I think he's obviously looking for the winger to run to it, but he's sort of like anyone else that's hoofed into, it's a miss hit and it's gone straight into touch and you sort of back, but that nicely bounces just inside the line and rolls out, and you're like, yeah, brilliant. It's not brilliant, but it's just him, you know what I mean? Like, it's just when things run well for you, they run well for you. So he was not at his best today, or I wouldn't say not his best, but he was still very good. But I say it's just his moments of brilliance, aren't there? When he just sort of, he sees a gap, he goes, he has the power to break a tackle, he's gone. The French know how to run off him. They have wingers come off their wings, come find him, all that kind of stuff, and he does set the tone for that French team. Yeah, he does, and I agree with you, Cole. I actually felt like he overplayed his hand a little bit tonight. Like he's such a threat, but he was almost constantly getting out, trying to make stuff happen. But I think it actually comes off the back of, so we talked about Wales shape, let's talk about France's shape. And sometimes there isn't really much shape, but I tell you what, they have got constant options around Dupont. It is a clear tactic. Like every time he gets out of a ruck, there is 2 or 3 forwards hovering around him. There's 2 often on the outside, there's 1 on the inside, and it's purely to isolate defenders and to make him do his thing. And we'll talk about the cross kick, for instance. So gets the ruck, sort of scoots out, as you say, Cole. He almost runs backwards and he almost runs behind the players that are options off him, and he almost uses them as a bit of a shield. And because he's running and because he's got so many options in, it means the defence has to look in. They have to keep going forward, but they have to look in because they're thinking he might running threat. He's got 2 or 3 outside him. He could play it back, needle it in between to Ntamack as well, which means Josh Adams has to hedge his bets a little bit, where he's in that sort of really tough position of, I need to cover the winger because he's in the 5 metre channel, but I need to be connected to my second last defender. Because if Dupont does chuck it out the back to Ntamack, or does decide to run backwards a bit more like he can, then all of a sudden you need to be able to do both. You need to be able to connect to that second last defender and go shut the play down. But Dupont almost just skips out and a pinpoint accuracy cross-field kick. So like an unbelievable skill, but it comes off the back of that constant shape, which then leads me on to the next bit. So the other assist he did all came from his line break. But you look at that line break, first of all, it's the ruck. You look at Gregory Allred, the 8, he'd gotten forward and almost like he's got his back turned to Jenkins and he just checks him enough. A smart play, just checks him enough. And as he's checked him, Rawlings, the second defender for Wales, has gone forward. And like rule 101 when you play against running nines is you can't get in front of the ball. So he's actually gone in front. So he's given that sort of, they call it dog leg in rugby, but that sort of shape, where he can go inside shoulders of Rawlings and outside shoulder Jenkins. Yeah, sorry, when you say get in front of the ball, it's more sort of get in front of the defender who's inside you. Yeah. So creating like a, as you say, a dog leg or a hole, just for the listeners. Yeah, no, exactly right. Just getting in front of that first defender, which he does. But Allred, you have a look at that. He just turns his back, really smart play, but that's all it needs. But not only that, and it comes back to my point, there was constant shape around Dupont. So
yes, Dupont has the power and the skill and the prowess to go through that gap, but he's got two attackers on his outside and he's got the winger on the inside, which means if you're Rawlings, like you're sitting there and you're like, I've got to look at this runner running at me. I know Dupont's there, but you can't mark everything, Coley, can you? You defend in that position. It's really hard when 9 has so much shape around him.
Well, you sort of pick your poison in some regards, because you sort of, there's a defender there. It's like, do I hit on Dupont and I have to make it a good... It's not like I can just push him over. He's a powerful bloke. He's going to carry, so I have to actually physically hit him. So I have to move on my line to hit him. But if I do that, I potentially open a carry, a hole for a carry on the sort of your outside shoulder. So there you got big runners, big French runners coming straight down there. And it's like, you sort of, at some point you have to make a decision. If you make the wrong decision, it's a line break. And that's the thing, is also with the French runners is you hedge your bets, but they're so big and strong and powerful that if they run into you, they're going to run over you. So that's a sort of like, you say you pick your poison in regards to, do I let Dupont beat me? Do I let the guy on the outside beat me? Or do I just stand still and let someone run into me really hard?
Absolutely, because if you jam in, or Rawlings jams in on Dupont to hit him, and the other defender outside Rawlings, the third defender for Wales, he doesn't come in with him, that gap gets bigger, which means Dupont then just leaves it out on his outside. So France's clear tactic was to create as many options around Dupont constantly. On this occasion, mate, all the options, he goes clean through. Like, I've got to say, incredible left foot step. Liam Williams is a classy operator. In fact, he's a very good defender, like gets over the ball. He's a tough bugger. But Dupont has just banged off the left, done him. And actually, I thought Dupont was going to go all the way, but unselfishly chucks it over the top and another try. And then, again, just for the third try, or the try just before half-time, for LBB, Louis Bierre-Barry, it's like a Maul Coley. And then just, I suppose... the difference between where you win a maul, because France basically win it middle to tail, and then they're mauling in field and basically almost mauling across, getting closer and closer to first post, that first post protector, which opens up the short side hugely. Now, as a forward, when it goes like that, you've got to hit it, haven't you?
Well, you've got sort of, especially if you're those defenders on the edges of the maul, it's kind of, the first threat is the maul, so you have to hit it and try and stop it. But obviously if you hit it, then you're shortening the line somewhere, either around the breakdown or everyone else is just in, there's space out wide. So it's, again, you hesitate for as long as you can, but you have to stop them all. And
so they're all hands on deck, they're hitting it, and Dupont just knows where to find the pass. So, within a phase, he knows where the ball is, which is over the top. It still took a step to finish it, but because you've opened up such a gap from that maul in terms of that short side, it's opened up, just the ball over the top is, again, just great vision. But I agree, he had some moments of absolute pure class, which all led to tries, right? But equally, he probably overplayed his hand a little bit. But there is a clear tactic from France, it looks like, to get as many numbers around him as possible around the ruck. And every time he gets out, and this is key as well, watch how he gets out. He doesn't get out from the ruck. He doesn't pick up and go sort of forward at a diagonal. He goes back. He goes lateral to get away from those defenders, which buys more time. And then all of a sudden, you've got 2 or 3 flat runners at the line. And there's a clear tactic to just keep hammering that door. And actually, Coley, when France are in the 22 attacking, like, it is big runner after big runner, like Mofana, Antonio, like Malfaka, like it's just like, where do you can't stop it, mate.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think we should also talk about Ntamack. He's obviously got a red card, Coley back into the game. It means it's very unlikely he'll be available for France against England. How big's that? Or do you just think it's a case of just Ramos slots in at 10?
As an England fan, you're kind of like, Ntamack's out, that's going to be, useful. Obviously, they're starting 10. I think it was a bit of a, talk about the incident itself, but like, it's a red card, but it's, if you're Ntamack, you're probably, it didn't look malicious. It looked almost like you're sort of semi-pulling out, because Welsh tends to kick the ball through, but it's just sloppy. And I think you're really going to regret that kind of just sloppiness, really, tardiness. But yeah, next week, in terms of losing him, I think Ramos next week will slot into 10, and the French will play very similar fashion. I don't think Ntamack made a couple of nice breaks and stuff, but it wasn't like he, sometimes you have a 10 will pull the strings of the game and everything goes through him, and you kind of like, he is the fulcrum of that team, where with France he's not. We said about Dupont, all the runners off him. Ntamack sort of pulls strings when he needs to, but it's Dupont's show, isn't it? So I think at 10, Ramos is there. He knows him. He's played there before. I think the French will, continue to do what they do.
So there we are. But Wales obviously go to Italy next. So, I mean, let's see. I thought their defence looked better, I say, which is ironic because they conceded 43 points, but it did. It looked better than it did in the autumn. The shape is the shape. I've proper gone after it, but I suspect they'll win more collisions against Italy than they would do France. But let's see if they evolve that shape a bit more. But one thing they've got to get quick to grips with really quickly at international level is you cannot give that many penalties away. Whether you're on the back foot and the pressure's on, you can't give 12 penalties away against the top teams. You just can't. It kills you territory-wise. You're having to dig in. You're back in your half constantly. And the way that they're playing, clearly multi-phase, which is obviously the way they want to play, is you can't exhaust yourself playing multi-phase. You can't be stuck on your own sort of halfway, Coley, going all these phases, then give away cheap pens, and then you got to D up and grind out to then relieve pressure and then give another penalty away. So that's one thing that they can definitely try and eradicate quickly.
Oh yeah, I think that's, yes, obviously. I say 12 penalties against you. I mean, the French only conceded 3, and one of those was the Ntamack's red card. So I think apart from that, so they've had 2 in the rest of the game. But yeah, Wales, you definitely look at the discipline. You go Italy next week. If you can eliminate some of that, even the cheap ones, I think the yellow card for basically constant defence in being offside is just stuff like that, where it's just have half a foot back. The risk reward is, the risk is you get yellow carded. The reward is a charge down, maybe not. What's he going to do? Kick it away, you get possession back. You just got to play those. You got to think about things a little bit more. It's always tough when you're on the back foot, especially in France. The crowd boos everything. I thought the TV was quite happy to show any sort of shot to the head of a sort of Frenchman or anything like that, but the Welsh should have. There's nothing ever put on the replay in France that makes the French look bad unless it's glaringly obvious. So, but you knew that was going to happen. I think Wales, they will take. There's a progress from the autumn, put it that way. Say going into Italy next week, there's progress. You think you got possession, you got players out there. They've played a game together for the first time since the autumn, and you got something to get into and get stuck into.
Yeah, there is definitely progress. So we'll see how they go. In terms of the French, I felt like they were, to sum them up, they're cruising in second gear. I felt like they'll probably be happy that they didn't concede. They'll be happy with elements of it. I think the shape they're trying to create around Dupont and the numbers at the line, that's a clear tactic. There'll be a bit of a headache about Ntamack and whether he'll be available or not. I suspect he won't be, but Ramos will slot into that. I don't know if Penno's back, so he might come back to that backfield then if there's a rejig, which is slightly terrifying, to be fair. But overall, France, kind of what you suspect, really, did the business without being too convincing, but there's more to come from that team.
I wonder if France, if they're sort of conserving energy in some regards. I mean, they've got a ginormous pack and powerful runners, and I sometimes think that, especially with the defensive stuff they're doing, is whether they are, like today, they were defended a lot, but it didn't look to be like they were expending loads of energy. I think sometimes with the size of the players they've got, if they can control the tempo, if they can play a sort of, not a slow game, but just they conserve it, collision-based, not a lot of running, and then they can bring it alive with attack when they need to. That's kind of is how they're going to play the game moving forward.
So there we go. That's our take on it. Look, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified, because we're going to have so much Six Nations content and you don't want to miss it, and I don't want you to miss it. So thanks for listening. Comment below. What do you reckon? If you're a Welsh fan, do you agree with us? Or do you not? Let us know. If you're a French fan, then let us know what you thought. If you're a neutral, then let us know what you thought. Get involved, comment below. If you've got any questions, we can answer them later on in the week, because we have episodes coming out on a Wednesday. So thank you very much. Thanks to Brewdog, because every nation needs a black heart. And thanks to Coley.
Thank you, Ben. The greatest championship has begun.